Hi, everybody. Welcome to Endurance Life 360. I'm Coach Jay Ridgway. Excited to have a special treat today. I've got Rebecca Hernandez out of San Jose, California, that's coming on the call today, and she's going to share her story with us about her journey from her early days in her 20s on up to where she is now with her successful journey into the endurance sports world. So, welcome, Rebecca. How are you today?
Oh, thank you, Coach Jay, for the introduction. I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day outside. It's a little warm, and we've been dealing with rain, but this is just a sign that today's going to be a great day, and I'm really super excited to be able to chat with you.
Yeah, no, excited to be with you as well too. And for those that know, I grew up in San Jose, so the weather's always great in San Jose, even if it's raining out, right?
Right, that's true.
Yeah, yeah. So let's kind of talk about. I think today's story is really exciting to me because I think there will be a lot of people that can potentially relate, to be honest with you, to some of the challenges you've had in life, and so. Apologies on this because I know some of this can be fairly deep and sensitive to it, but we talked a little bit on the pregame about sort of your history and your journey. Let's talk about right now. You have just come off successfully doing the Houston Marathon a week or two ago. That ended up being number 52 in terms of full marathon, right?
Yes, yes,
And then even more impressive is the fact that you don't look a day over 20, and here you are, you've reached the big 5.0, which you now come into my exclusive club of a 50 something year old, right? Or beginning to enter in that club. But 50 marathons by the time you turn 50 plus marathons by the time you turn 58. That was not a goal of yours in the very beginning. So we'll take that moment and then kind of pull all the way back to the 90s or so. I think it was when we were
sure.
talking about that when you were 24, 20, 25 years of age. Can you kind of talk about where you were at that point in your life? And I know there was marriage there, and then sadly followed by a divorce there with some kids in there. So there's some challenges there that maybe some of these folks can relate to about how did you overcome those difficult times and then refocus your efforts into the wonderful world of endurance sports.
Sure. All right. Well, sure. Yeah, it's going back to in the 90s. So it was a 23, 24 years old. It was 1997. And prior to that year, I was sedentary for the most part. Endurance sport, I didn't even know what that was, running, walking, not even walking. It was just work, family, friends. That was my kind of my circle. And at the time, my fiance. It was in January of 1997 where I decided with a friend of mine who at her suggestion joined a gym, and so we joined our local YMCA, and it was a 5 days a week, and it was a 1 hour class of either like step aerobics or interval training, and I just at first I was so nervous to go in there because again I'm coming in over 200 pounds. I think I don't know if I shared that I was over 200 pounds of sedentary, very self-conscious, very nervous, felt like, oh my God, I'm going to fall flat on my face. I don't know what I'm doing. But when I stepped into that environment, a lot of the nervousness went away, a lot of the overtime, and a lot of the I can't do became, I think I can do this. And I really credit the instructor that was there, the regulars that were there. I eventually became a regular, but the women that were there, it was primarily women. They just took me under their wing.
Mm.
And I remember one time I didn't show up. I think I didn't go for a few days. And when I returned, they were all over me. Where were you? Where did you go? And again, felt like, oh my God, I'm seen, and
Yeah.
I'm contributing to this. I'm now part of this, this
Community.
this club, this
Yeah.
crew,
Community. Yeah.
and yeah, the part of a community,
Yeah.
and a non-judging, safe, where if I did fall, if I did fail, nobody was going to sit there and say you did that, you couldn't do this. It was more like, okay, next time, or try something different, right? Try something different. So,
Love it.
that journey, that experience kept me going back. My friend, by the way, dropped out 2 months later. Kept going. And in that first year, I dropped 30 pounds. I lost 30 pounds,
Wow.
and I didn't change my eating habits. People say like, oh, I think I think we try to do too much, right? Especially at the beginning of a new year.
Right.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do this. And
Yeah.
mine was like, can I sustain this habit of going to the gym every single day. And I did because I loved it. It didn't feel like work. It didn't feel like it was hard. But I didn't feel like it was a burden. And I would miss when I couldn't go, I would miss it. And then, a year later, I think, I dropped these 30 pounds. And that's when I started like, oh, if I stopped eating these cheeseburgers or stopped drinking soda, I could lose more weight. So I started realizing I could feel better if I focused on my food intake. So that happened like a year and a half later. But I started running. How I found running was I traveled, I think it was the summer of 99. And I realized I cannot take my group exercise instructor with me to this
Mm.
vacation. What am I
Yeah.
going to do? Right.
Yeah.
There's no YouTube. There was nothing I could download to
Totally
follow.
back then. Yeah.
Right. There's nothing, right? So
Yeah.
I found the hotel treadmill and I had my yellow Walkman and my headset and put my cassette tape in there. And I found the hotel treadmill and I ran for 2 miles and I hated it. All of it. But I realized that was a great fallback when I couldn't go to a class. I could do something, be active. And so
Yeah.
I think that was something that I learned. What did I learn from that was if I can't do A, I have B, and having that fallback plan to um to be active really helped me, and that's how I found my like, oh, I kind of like running.
Yeah, well, question on that, and I know we didn't talk about that in the pregame, but the was there somebody that was guiding you and recommending and suggesting to you to make those decisions? Like, well, you don't have the group fitness class available to you. You're not home.
Yeah.
Were those decisions that you made on your own by yourself, or were there influences there or someone helping direct you? Because I know we talked about that. You haven't up until more recently, you didn't have a coach back then per se,
Mhm.
right? Other than your group fitness instructor, Bertha, I
Correct.
think is her name, right? Who
Yeah,
was,
Bertha, yes.
yeah.
And no, I didn't have, I mean, I think I was winging it. I just, would
Mm.
just, here's the treadmill, let me try it. And like I said, I tried 2 miles and I was very conservative. How I approach running was very conservative. Like I would stay in the 2 mile range for like months because I'm
Yeah.
like, I cannot do 2.5. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna like pass out, something's gonna happen. And
Yeah.
so I had to learn how to do that. And I explained, I shared with you all my training up until my first half marathon in 2005 was on a treadmill. Why? I was too embarrassed and I didn't know. Like if I had had like a coach or a mentor or somebody that was
Mhm.
experienced in the running, they would have, I think I would have come out of my shell. But because I didn't know and I was really nervous, I did all my training exclusively on a treadmill. Trained for a 5K and a 10K on a treadmill.
Yeah.
And a 24-hour fitness.
Well,
So I
that's even
used
more
my training.
impressive to me. That's even more impressive to me because of the simple fact that, I have to train in a treadmill because I'm now in Reno, Tahoe because we have 4 seasons out here. But yeah, I remember back in the day, treadmill running was just not, it was just not fun. It's a different
Mhm.
ball game now with technology and stuff like that.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, the fact that you had that self-discipline and knowing that you probably weren't necessarily happy on that, but because you're dealing with your inner demons, if I may say, of, I can't be out inside in public, the fact that you stayed disciplined on that is just super impressive to me. That said, we're talking about group fitness introduction in 1997. You mentioned that first half marathon was 2005.
Yes. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was my
so
first.
we had a pretty big long
Yeah.
runway of getting group fitness, getting that community underneath you, not on the running side, but eventually what led you to say, I want to do, I think originally you told me you wanted to do a marathon, but
Correct.
then the challenges there were
Mhm.
were,
Family,
yeah, the
children.
family, right? And we
Yes.
didn't talk about that. So let's talk about briefly about that. You had a fiance back in
Mhm.
1987. You got
Mhm.
married when? And then when did you have
Sure.
your children?
Sure. So, married in 1998, this February of 98,
Yeah.
and I had my son in January of 2002 and my daughter in August of 2004. My marriage fell apart right after the birth of my daughter. It was around that time where we separated. So I became a single mom with a 2.5-year old and a newborn.
Wow.
And that was so all of 2005 was dealing with the breakup of the marriage, the divorce proceedings, manage working full time, 2 kids, and trying to just figuring out how am I going to do this.
Yeah.
And I needed an escape. And to me, the escape was, let me train for a marathon.
That's not a
So,
normal decision, but
you know,
impressive.
you know why? Because I think I was so emotionally wrecked that I think I
Yeah,
needed to be physically wrecked. Like I needed the physical challenge to
yeah,
equal the emotional.
yeah.
So I figured that way I can be distracted, right? I can just focus on physically punishing myself. That way I don't have to deal with the emotion. So I think that was the logic I used.
Yeah, yeah,
And it do
yeah.
say running is cheaper than therapy. So there you go. That was another thing. And it was quickly I
It's
realized
transformative. Running is
it,
transformative in many
it
ways,
is.
obviously. Yeah,
But what I realized, even with a strong support network that I had with my family, my sisters, my parents, my mother-in-law that was super supportive through as we were going through the divorce. I realized I didn't have the time to devote to what to train for a marathon.
yeah,
So I pivoted and focused on a half marathon. And again, having a that's when I joined. I did find a circle, a running community through San Jose Fit,
yeah.
and I joined a yellow group. And Coach Nicole Varnell was my coach at the time. We're now connected again. But at the time, she would train with her baby in a stroller. So I was so inspired, like, wow, they're making it work, right?
Yeah.
There was a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. I'm very super grateful that my parents were able to help me through that,
Mm.
and help me take care of the kids while I went and did my longer runs.
Yep.
But throwing myself in this physical challenge was lifesaver. It helped me get through one of the toughest years of my life, which was, my divorce.
Yeah. Dark, dark days there. Having been through that, I can relate to a certain degree, obviously, and having the fitness component is definitely has become a sanctuary for so many people there. So
Mhm.
October 2005, you completed your first half marathon.
I did the Silicon Valley Marathon Fest, a running event. They had
Yeah.
a half marathon and a full marathon. Started in downtown San Jose, finished in Los Gatos. I finished, I think it was like 2 hours and 17 minutes, and I felt like somebody stabbed my hamstring because I was in so much like pain. Like
Oh,
I mean,
geez.
I mean, it was because again,
Yeah.
I my first time, right? Like so, it was, but it didn't scare me. It's like okay, I can do it, and that really
But you
motivated
had
me.
races under your belt prior to that. I mean, I have the notes there. You had done the San
Yeah.
Jose Mercury 10K,
Yes.
which I,
Yes.
as growing up in San Jose, have it jogged some amazing memories of me
Yeah.
when I was younger, having done that. It's a sad that I don't think that's around anymore, right?
No. Mm-mm.
But that was
It's
like, 2003. So just so the audience understands, you had a ramp up period of doing what has been disclosed to me that you have done everything sort of in the right way. You didn't go in there with flaring, as I like to say, your peacock feathers or trying to do too much.
no,
You had a
no,
conservative approach. You allow yourself to be able to trial and error, but do a slow ramp up, building confidence along the way. So you had a couple of these smaller distances, and then you decided, hey, I need something bigger.
right.
Marathon was not possible because of being the single parent and the working single parent and all that stuff. But you achieved that, which is super impressive to me. From there, 2005, where did you, sort of go there? Did you remain with San Jose Fit for a number of more years, or how did that journey go from there?
So after that season ended, I decided, I'm going to go solo. So I, from
Wow.
2006, 7, 8, 9, those years, I look back and my training was very spotty. I think I would do like maybe 2, 3 half marathons a year. Because again, my focus is on the kids and school. So I wasn't as I didn't have a regimen or a strict schedule. Like I got to run here, I got to run here. It was more when can I fit it in?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't want to say limbo, but I would run and I would run by myself. I didn't have a group to run with at all. And it wasn't until, 2011 when, I met, 2011 is when Too Legit Fitness came to be. And that was through Coach Bertrand Newson. I met him 2 years prior. So I knew him, and we would do obstacle course and he pulled me in. It was through that relationship, that connection, that really opened up this whole world of the running community. Because I
Yeah.
think I was very sheltered in the way I was approaching running, like solo.
Yeah.
And I didn't think of it as lonely or anything like that. It was just that's what worked for me. It just had to work that way. I do believe everything happens for a reason. And so when I met Bertrand, Coach B, and then over the years, it just, his circle of influence expanded. And, that's when I started running with other folks, other people, was in like 2011 and going forward.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how that evolves to this day because you're now heavily involved with the group there with Too Legit. But back to the San Jose Fit, just so the audience and myself can get clarification. The way they did their programming, there was a seasonal programming, right?
Yes,
You train
yes,
for a specific event, you have a ramp up of, a start, and then you have your periodization, and it has a start date, it has an end date. So when you said you went solo, it was understanding that San Jose Fit was structured that way. It wasn't an ongoing year-round sort of community like what Too Legit Fitness evolved into and continues to do very, very well to this
yes,
day. That
yes,
was part of the journey that you went through. So from there, 2011, Too Legit kind of formalized from doing these sort of non sort of broader activities like the Warrior Dash, the Tough Mudders,
mhm,
the Spartan Race type of obstacle course training, and then I really got into more of like let's really embrace the endurance side of it, specifically the running side of it. Um, with that, you eventually got to the point in your life where a marathon came into play.
yes.
You want to
So
talk
I
about when that all happened, or how did
Sure.
that go?
So it went from, my 5Ks, 10Ks in early 2000s, jumped to the half marathon in 2005, and it took me 8 years to mentally be ready for
Yeah.
tackling a marathon. And again, my insecurities were like, no, I can't, I can't. A lot of negative talk. I can't, I can't. And it wasn't until, the beginning of January of 2013, it was the year I was going to turn 40. So that was also a
Yeah.
driving, like a milestone year. I need to do something, I want to do something to commemorate me turning 40. And Coach B had already ran his first marathon the year prior. And he just started running in 2011. So I'm like, how the heck did he run a marathon? And I've been running for how long and I have not run a marathon. So
Yeah. Yeah.
he was like, nudging, like you're ready for a marathon. You're overdue for a marathon.
Yeah.
And so on his advice and his nudging, I signed up for the San Francisco Marathon that year for my first. And at that time, I wasn't about, let me research what the elevation is. Let me research this. I was like, okay, San
Yeah.
Francisco, beautiful, sure.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
later find out it's like one of the toughest
Yeah. No,
marathons
I was
you can
joking
do.
with you on the pregame, like, kudos to you, Coach B, if you're listening, that you got her to commit to doing her first marathon. But man, as a coach, I probably wouldn't have chosen that one as your first one
Right?
because it is so damn hilly, right? But
Yes,
you had a great experience though, right?
I did. And I think, I was a little scary because I thought I wasn't going to be able to do it because I injured myself in April
Mm,
leading up to that training, in that training block, or leading up to June. I had a
July. Yeah.
knee issue, so I stopped running and I focused on my group exercise. So at the time, I was already a certified Group X instructor, so I would teach classes, take classes, but I think that helped me stay conditioned from a cardio perspective, from a strength perspective.
Yeah.
So I did about maybe 40 miles. I'm not kid you not. I mean, this is before I was logging my miles. So, but I just remember, like, I took off all of April. I didn't run at all.
Yeah.
May, I started running like 2, 3 miles. And then I did one long run, a 13 mile. I just did a half marathon as my long run. And then I
Yeah.
showed up on June 16th, I think it was, to run my first marathon. And I thought, at the time it was like everybody, the goal is beat Oprah, right? Let's beat Oprah. And so my goal was like,
Mm.
before I got injured, right? 4:28, like, or 4:29, whatever her time was. Well, once I had the injury, I'm like, what other celebrity can I? Because I'm like, okay, I don't think I'll be able to do 4:28 because I didn't have the training. So I looked up them all. Al Roker. Al Roker did a marathon in like 7 hours. Okay, I'm gonna beat Al Roker. So I was coming after Al Roker. And
Great.
but I think that's what made it such a wonderful experience was I really didn't have a time goal. I did not want to finish injured. I didn't want to potentially re-aggravate what I was feeling prior to that marathon.
Yeah.
But I finished in, like, I don't know, 5 hours, 17 minutes. I finished almost at a walking pace because I remember thinking, I'm never going to have another first marathon. This is it. Soak
Yep.
it in, soak it in. And I did. I was like, and, and when I crossed that finish line, I'm like, I can't wait to do this again. That's how I felt. And that's what I tell when anybody asks me about running a first marathon. I say, you want to, when you cross that finish line, it's going to be amazing. You want to be able to say, I want to do it again. That's to me success. I want to do this again. So it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, well, one of the hidden messages in this is that you became a group fitness instructor that was obviously inspired by your longtime group fitness instructor from your
Yeah.
YMCA program,
Mhm.
instructor Bertha. You did that the year prior to 2012, I think, as my notes say. Is that right?
Yeah, I've certified. You know, Bertha, there's looking back, there are key, pivotal moments in my life that have me where I am today. My divorce,
Mm,
my meeting Bertha in 1997, and realizing how she impacted me, her impact on my life, and how she accepted me for who I was, and she believed in me, and she encouraged me. And I realized, wow, like just one person could do that, And when I decided, when I was on the fence of becoming a group exercise instructor in 2012, I remembered Bertha and I said, wow, if I could be that for one person, that's pretty cool.
yeah.
And so at the time, I love my group exercise. Again, running, group exercise, it's a battle. I love them
Yeah.
both.
Yeah, no,
I
no.
love them both.
It's the power of that, and then just the testimony to the audience of how critical when I work with my athletes, and quite frankly for myself too,
Mhm.
functional core strength training is a paramount foundational piece to the being a successful endurance athlete, and you are a case in point of that component into your training, that you focused in on that, you dedicated yourself to that, knowing that you couldn't do, the core discipline of a marathon or a
Right.
half marathon is the run component there, but you were able to successfully not only achieve finishing it, but you achieved that one healthy for the most part, given you were injured for most of the training, and two, you did it with the right mental perspective of like, I'm going to just soak it all in and absorb it. Obviously, you're in San Francisco, which is, as we all know, a spectacular city, especially during that time. Just a lot of activity going on there. Yeah, kudos to you in terms of making the right decisions. And what's exciting to me is that you became a fitness instructor, and you appreciate what Bertha had um, transferred to you through her knowledge and inspiring you to live a healthy, active lifestyle. And hopefully, I'm sure you have not only been doing that since 2000, back then, 2012, you're doing that still to this day. Is that correct?
I am. I'm still teaching, not as much. My volume has gone down
Yeah.
because I just realized as I turned 50 last year, that my body it changes. And so I have to make now
Yeah.
just
Welcome to the
decisions,
club.
right?
Yeah.
You
Yep.
have to make decisions. It's like, okay, if I do this, that's fine, but just know that this may not, you may not be able to do this. So
Yep.
it's now trade-offs and finding that balance. So I am still teaching, focusing more on strength training.
Yep. As you
And when I
should.
can,
Yeah.
I'll do my step aerobics.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it was a fun thing when you said yes, you just absolutely fell in love with step aerobics. That is
Love
such
step
a,
aerobics.
yeah, such a fun thing to do. I've done that back in the day, and came out of there sore, and you're thinking like, oh, this is easy, and then you walk out and you're like, wow, I am destroyed right now. And it takes me a couple weeks to recover from that, but that's
Exactly. Yep.
exciting in terms of your journey. So
Mhm.
let's kind of narrow the focus now. You
Yep.
achieved your first marathon at the age of 40. That was 2013 San Francisco half marathon. You follow that up, I think, with one or two additional half marathons that year. I know CIM was part of that. Is that right?
Yeah. So in 2013, I did two marathons, the San Francisco and the CIM. Those
Yep.
were my first two in 2013. Yes.
So age of 40, two marathons.
Yes.
Fast forward 10 years to now, you have 52. So you had two of that first year, and
Yeah.
somehow, some unbelievable way, you added another 50 marathons to that list. And I don't think it was evenly spread out.
No. Mm-mm.
Let's talk a little bit about the migration, the influence of Two Legit Fitness, which, now you're the co-captain, if you will, with Coach Bertrand. But let's just be honest here, you're really running the show. Let's just be honest here, the audience, right? You're running the
Yes,
show.
it is.
Okay, awesome. How do we get 50 G damn marathons under your belt in 10 years? Just that is just
Yeah.
mind blowing to me. How do you do it?
Um, I, community, having people around you that doesn't tell you that's crazy, don't do that. So first of
Yeah.
all, again, community, finding your people, right? Finding people that will support you. And again, I never really thought that 50 was a goal until maybe during the pandemic. It was actually during the pandemic when I did my calculation. I said, you know what, if my body holds up and I plan this right, I might be able to hit that 50. Because in
Yeah.
2019, I was about to hang it up, Coach Jay. I was like, I was fed up with feeling broken. There was just issues with my, just constant, like my back hurts, my leg hurts, my this hurts, everything. And it was going back to like I was doing too much, and I had to figure out what's the balancing act as I approached 50. I think I was still trying to thinking that I could do what I was doing in my 30s and I was being very stubborn about that. So I think over the years, just saying yes, maybe when I shouldn't have said yes, but I think again, being around Coach B, being around, other runners like, Jackie and Randy, and these are all people from a running crew.
Yeah.
They would be right, let's run. Sure. Time, time and place. We're going to go do a marathon. Sure. Time and place. There was
Yeah.
nobody ever to say, that doesn't sound like you shouldn't do
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Um, and so yeah, some years I think my most I did 7 marathons in one year.
Mm.
And then I think in 2019 I only did one because I was
Beat up.
done.
Yeah.
I was just
Yeah.
broken. Like I just
Yep.
didn't feel, and my morale was low, and I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. So I would still run, but the focus wasn't the marathon. And people called me out on that. They're like, I thought you were retired. You said you were retiring. I said, I lied.
Yeah.
Simple
Yeah.
as that. I lied.
That's is exciting. And then when you did the calculation, how many did you have to go from
Um,
2019 to get to 50 or 52? I mean, it's now 52, but 50.
I think it was 12. I
Yeah.
think you needed to do 12. So I did, like I know, at the end of 2022, I was at marathon 46. And at
Mm.
the end of 2021, I think I was at marathon 41.
Yeah.
So I think something like that, something like that. So I knew that, okay,
You were damn close.
I was worried. I was worried. I'm like, what if this doesn't, and I mean, but at the end of the day, if it didn't happen, would I be disappointed? Yes. But it was a goal that I'm like, let's see what happens. I'm going to go after it
Yeah.
and just be, and this is where I think the benefit of having a coach like Coach B, hey, maybe you should, being more
The
on the day
sounding
to
board.
day,
Yeah.
right? A sounding board,
Sounding
and
board.
just
Yep.
realizing or noticing like, hey, you're doing too much of this, or like, when was the last time you took a rest day? And I'm like, no comment. So again, those are the things that where you think you're like, oh, I don't need anybody to tell me that. But until somebody does and looks at what you're doing and says, you know what, you should probably do something here, or why don't you tweak this? That definitely opened up, made it possible, made it even like what seemed like the pipe dream. I'm like, oh my God, this is actually could happen. Like I could actually hit this goal. So
Yeah,
and
super impressive. The power of the community, especially your community there with Too Legit is when you have teammates that are in the same sort of discipline in you, you don't need a lot of enemies because they're going to drag you on into doing these things, when I say that
right.
affectionately, because had you gone down that path um of being on your own, like when you separated from the San Jose Fit
Mhm.
organization and you said you went soloist, for example, that challenge of getting to 50 probably, let's just be honest, probably could not have probably happened if you were
Right.
doing that on your own. And the power of being part of that community and such a strong community that the Too Legit team is that's why you got to where you are today.
Yeah. And there
Which
was
is so impressive, right?
examples, Coach B hit 50 in 2019. Nicole Varnell hit 50, 50 marathons last year, I
Yeah.
believe, or 2 years ago. So there was examples that were being set, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's these are things that are achievable when one you have to do the work, but you're surrounded by a community that is also equally excited for you to hit that goal. And in fact, this year we're going to have, I think, two teammates, Jackie, I've mentioned them before, Jackie and Randy, they're going to hit their 50 this year. So we're just like super excited that they're going to hit their 50.
Will you join in on the runs with them and run with them, or you just be cheering them on?
We're going to be cheering them on because I believe one of them might be at the Chicago Marathon where they'll hit their 50. So we'll be
Beautiful.
where I hit my 50 at the New York City Marathon, and it was like, I mean, talk about just like sensory overload of like a mate, and like, I'm running my 50th marathon in New York City at the New York City Marathon. So it was, I'm
Yeah,
never
you
going to
could.
forget that.
Yeah, you couldn't have chosen a more perfect one to do just because of the sheer scale and the size and just mind blowing how that, as we talked about in the pregame, how yeah, I've done it twice.
Hmm.
9/11 was my first year post 9/11, and so it's just such an emotional event and just overwhelming, just the sheer scale. I mean, 55,000 runners actually finishing. It's not 55,000 people registered, it's 55,000 finishers, and just the sheer scale of it. So amazing a way to wrap up that goal of yours and achieving it. That said, what I want to kind of dive into, because this was never part of your planned journey. I mean, like you
Hmm.
said before, this is kind of organically just evolved, and how you've come across such great influence of people that still to this day still influence you, and hopefully, I'm pretty confident you're influencing them back. But you have dabbled with qualifying for the Super Bowl of the marathon, the sport of marathon, which is the Boston Marathon, several times here. And I know we haven't had the chance to actually get there yet, but I have extreme confidence that you will, and you are going there this coming April. But let's kind of talk about that journey, talk about the unique circumstances that you're doing, which is super cool because you're kind of giving back and supporting a teammate. Let's talk about that journey because you've had a couple of opportunities where you've qualified, I think, more than a couple
Yes.
opportunities.
Yes. I am the bridesmaid, never the bride when it comes to Boston. That's the way I'm going to
Stop.
look at it. I've qualified 4 times, I've applied 4 times, and I've not met the cutoff. So the buffer, I went from I think one year I missed it by like 17 seconds. This past year, I needed, I think it was like over 3 minutes. I missed it by like 3 minutes. So disappointing. The first couple times stung. Like I was just like, this sucks, and very, very sad about it. These
Yeah.
last 2 times, I'm like, okay, what am I learning? What am I learning here? What's the learning? I think that's what again, the from the negative talk, like, okay, it didn't happen. There's a reason it didn't happen. I don't know why it didn't happen, and I'll find that out later. And for this particular round, this lot for to run the 2024, I didn't get in, and I was down in the dumps. But not as much. I was more like, okay, when I read that 33,000 people applied, I'm like, okay, this buffer is going to be it's going to be a tight, a miracle to get in. Um, I think like maybe a month later, after the Boston results came out and we knew that I knew that I wasn't going to go. One of our teammates, Kenneth, who is visually impaired, he Boston qualified last year at Mounts Beach, and he
Yeah.
was Boston bound. Um, he extended an invite to Coach B to be one of his guides at this year's Boston, and also extended an invite to me to
Outstanding.
be a guide.
Cool.
So um, I was, first of all, just completely like just humbled that he thought of me. And I said yes, of course. I'm like, I get the opportunity to run Boston, run his race. We're going to run at his pace, his race, his goal, is also to Boston. He wants to qualify at Boston for next
Yep.
year. So
Yep.
we're going to have our work cut out for us to
Yep.
make sure he gets there. I did though have to say that there's a little bit of sadness in reconciling what I always thought was going to be how my first time at Boston was going to be like, that it wasn't the way I thought it was going to be. And now it's this. And guess what? It's probably going to be much better. It's going to be such a wonderful, enriching experience being able to pay it forward with Kenneth. If you get to experience it with Bertrand, who is my partner. And
Yep.
so we get to run Boston together. I get to see Boston and not have the pressure of running it at my race. I'm going to run it with him and get to see it through his eye, through um, you know, his experiences, his team. I'm just super excited to toe the line. There's going to be teammates from Too Legit out there,
Yep.
and so yeah, it's going to be an amazing experience, and I'm looking forward to it. And I know this is this now I know, like, this is why you didn't get in. This was the door that was going to open for you. And now you're going to have this experience to help you when you do get there, when the time is, when it's my time.
Yeah, yeah. It will inspire you to do whatever the additional things that you need to do to get there because it's, like we talked about with having done the New York City Marathon, I've done Boston, what, 7, 8 times now. I need to go back because it's just such a magical experience and being able to absorb it again, knowing that you are there for Ken as the priority, but you'll be able to absorb all that and just there'll be a huge smile on your face the entire time because it's just overwhelming from start to finish as a point to point race of how the community comes out. It's a holiday on a Monday,
Right?
Patriots Day. So it's a very unique event, very special. And I mean, it's what is it, 128th year anniversary coming up. I
Wow.
mean, not too many events that can claim that, right? It is
Yeah.
the granddaddy of them all, the Super Bowl of sport. And so I'm super excited for you, Bertrand. Obviously, Ken, congratulations if you listen to this podcast as well, too. Super impressive and excited for everybody involved. That
Yes.
said, I just being sensitive to time, we're doing great on time, by the way. Um, you know, we didn't talk about this in the pregame, but I made a conscious note and apologize if we get some emotions going here. But your kids, I think you recently did some racing with your son, and I don't know about your daughter or not, but you want to talk a little bit about your kids. We didn't mention their names, so let's get their names out there so they get some
Sure.
credibility here.
Yes. My son is, his name is Jacob. He's 22. And my daughter is Carolina. She's 19. They're both college students here attending college here at West Valley and San Jose State. My
Love it.
son is, and people ask me, like, oh, your kids must run with you. And I said, well, not really. I used to drag them to the turkey trot every year. Every Thanksgiving morning, I would drag them out there, we'd walk it. I'd throw my daughter in the stroller. She'd be head to toe in like her fancy shoes, her tights, her bow, her like she was not dressed to run. But because she was being pushed in the stroller, she put her best outfit on because she didn't
Yeah.
have to work. But over time, my son is interested in law enforcement, so he wants to pursue a career in that field. And there are some physical endurance requirements. Like there's a academy that needs to prepare for. So that has inspired him to run because get fit, get ready for this his next chapter in his life once he graduates. So yes, that has been actually the inspiration for him joining me on runs. The last couple of years, he's done. We're just in the 5Ks right now. I don't want to say just. We're in the 5Ks. 5K is tough, especially for somebody that doesn't run at all. Training for a 5K can be daunting. And my
Your
son,
son, your son's not also not petite either. You want
no,
to,
my son is 6 foot 6'1" and 275. He's
yeah.
huge. He's a big guy. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
So movement, especially running, there's a lot of pounding, a lot of impact. So,
Sure.
being mindful of that, I'm wearing this coach hat with him. And it's hard, right? It is with parents telling your kid to do something, they don't believe you until a stranger says it. And they're like, oh, of course. Like I just said the exact same thing. So it's a bit of a battle, but he's been very receptive because he knows that this is going to help him get to where he wants to go.
Yeah.
So I'm really right now enjoying this time with him, being able to see like, okay, let me, we like the other day, we just charted out for the next few weeks what his run schedule looks like.
Yeah.
And we signed up. We did a New Year's Day 5K. That's his benchmark. We have a Shamrock Run on March 16th, the 5K. So it's a 10-week training block. So I
Yeah.
said, okay, we want to improve on this time. How much we improve, it depends on how much work you do and the effort you put in. So yeah, I'm looking forward to running with him on March 16th, and whatever the outcome is, I'm just excited that he's motivated and he's committed to running. I think right now I'm trying to get him to run like 12 miles a week. And you're like, and that to him is a lot. So I said, well, seeing it through his eyes as a newbie, somebody new to the space where I didn't have anybody, I'm not like, I'm trying not to be very like, you have to do it this way. Like, see how you feel. Try it, see how it feels. Let me know. We can adjust. This is why we're writing it in pencil. We can erase it. Or
Yeah.
putting it in notes. We can delete. So giving him a lot of space to feel like, the wide net. There's no failure here. We're learning. We're learning how your body is going to, how it's going to feel after running, up to 15 miles a week. Maybe running a certain pace that you're not comfortable with. How do you feel about that? So yeah, so I'm excited about that. My daughter, no, she's not about that life. And maybe one day I though do guilt trips with them. I say, when I'm, 10 years from now, when I'm, this and that, I'm going to look back and I'm going to say, all I ever wanted was to run or, run a half marathon with my kids. And they're like, gee, mom. And I said, well, I'm using the guilt card.
I
So
love it.
maybe one day.
Well, you are a role model for them, not only for your own kids, but obviously many others when in and with it inside and outside of obviously the two legit teams. So I've been so impressed with you and I'm so excited to have you on the call. And kudos to you for working with your son. You're doing it the right way, coach. And I say coach, which is another segue I want to talk about because you have your group fitness instructor. So you're in a way instructor, certified instructor is a coach, right? Because I'm sure your participants, they say, hey, thanks instructor. They say thanks coach, right? So,
Yep.
but let's talk about that. You have enough experience in your belt. Your journey is so impressive with me. You're mentoring and guiding your son along in his journey to become a law enforcement officer, things of that nature, but you don't have that sort of official certificate on the wall yet. Let's talk a little bit about that. Will you enter into the ranks of being a certified coach, and what are your plans with that?
Yes and yes. I That is my plan, and I know Coach B is listening to this, and he's probably, really excited that I'm putting this on. I'm
Yeah,
actually saying this
you're
on
welcome, Coach
camera,
B.
on film. You are now everybody's my accountability partner on this one. Yes, it came to light. I think last year, was toying with the idea, because I again, me being like feeling like an imposter, like I'm not a coach. What do I know? Like I'm seriously, that's what I think about. What do I know? What do I know? But but what I realized, the coach is more the sounding board. Being able to read up, through a certification program, and I am looking to be certified, hopefully, knock on wood, by in this May timeframe through
Right.
RRCA.
Yep.
Um, but I think it gives me an opportunity to, one, study and learn, by
Yep.
reading material, understanding a framework and approach.
Yep.
Um, and also, just I think what I bring to the table is just knowing how it is to be scared out of your mind trying something new, and not and realizing the value of having somebody that believes in you, and how it can change your life, how it can just make you just
100%.
do things that you're like, I didn't think I could do this, but that person did. Bertha was that person, Coach B was that person. You're that person, Coach J. With your triathlons, I look at you, I'm like, oh my God, how the heck do you do all that? But you never know. I mean, like, you're planting seeds. I think everybody we meet, there's a reason we're meeting that person. That person comes into our life, and like, what are we learning from that person? How do we how is that helping me? We may not see it right away, but down the road you will. And that's what I hope with my kids. Like, I dragged them to those turkey trots, I dragged them here, and right now I see it with my son. He's motivated, he's actually enjoying this.
Yeah.
My daughter, I'm going to hold up. I'm not giving
There's
up
still
hope.
time.
She'll if
There's
there's
still
still
time.
time.
There's still
Planting a
time.
seed, I planted a seed, and that's all I can do. But I
Right.
think with the coaching, having that certification, I think it'll help me from a confidence perspective. Like, I don't feel like I'm an imposter.
Well, stop that first and foremost there. You have a journey that I think people can relate to. Maybe not all packaged in the same way, but I think there are definitely many people that are out there that, whether they know you or whether they are getting to know you through, well, obviously this podcast here, of like they can relate to certain aspects of that. And then there could be some that completely relate to that, especially the single moms that are out there that have gone through the dark days of a divorce and having to have the responsibility of caring for their children and raising them. And you've done that in spades, as I like to say, with such great success. And the fact that you've been a role model to those kids that will, you may not see it today with your daughter, but that it will pay dividends down the road because you are a role model to her with everything you've done, not just the endurance side of things, right? It's how you've done and been successful and the success you've had both in your career, which we didn't kind of talk about, which I apologize on that, but I know you're very successful in the career side as well too. So very inspiring, Rebecca. There'll be an opportunity, I think, somewhere down the road here that, we should probably get back together. Maybe we bring in Coach B on the conversation here, but, I love your journey. Your journey is so inspiring to so many of us. And I appreciate you taking the time today to share that story with all of us. And I wish you, I mean, what's the next on the race agenda for you? What do you have coming up now?
Tomorrow there's a half marathon in San Juan Bautista, but the next big race, I think I'm gonna toe the line again for Boston at Modesto Marathon in March on March
That's
24th.
right.
So I'm, again, going in with, and the fact that I'm sharing it, usually I internalize this. Like, I don't want to share anything because I feel like I'm going to let
Apologies.
yeah, but you know what? I'm looking at this like I'm excited. I'm actually excited to go for it.
Yep.
And there's no failure. It's going to be, what am I going to learn from this?
Yep.
Let's,
It's how
let's
you
go for it.
learn. It's
It's
how you
how I, yep,
learn.
time to
Yep.
learn.
Yeah. Well, on that note, everybody, one final note that you wanted to say to the audience here, messages or anything like that. Do you got anything else that you come to mind that you want to say before we wrap it up?
Just, we're in January, new habits, this new year, new me. I was that person back in 1997, and just realizing, like, just be kind to yourself. We are our own worst critic.
Yeah,
It's okay. We're gonna stumble along the way, but again, find yourself that community, find that champion. They're there and they want to help. Everybody here, the running community is so welcoming, and so it's just finding that community, finding that niche, and putting yourself out there too. You have to make yourself vulnerable as well to be able to receive that. So yeah.
tremendous way to wrap this thing up, Rebecca. Really appreciate you getting to know a lot more details about you, and I can't wait to see what the next 10 years brings to us. In terms of your success, especially with you making the entry into being a legitimate certified coach, which I know you'll have a tremendous following behind that. So, all right, guys, many nuggets of knowledge, as I like to say. Appreciate it. Thanks again for joining us on the latest edition of the Endurance Life 360, everybody.
All right.
Cheers.
Thank you, Coach Dave.
You bet.